Lachie Keefe, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me, mate. It's been a while.
It's been a while. It's exciting.
I remember sitting down listening to Josh Kelly's first one, and I thought, I might be next, but not quite. A few episodes in, but pleasure to be here, man.
It is. It's been a long time, actually, and we have... Well, let's go to that now, because we have a funny story of how... Not how we met, because we met probably nearly 8-9 years ago with a mutual friend, Tom Bell.
Yeah.
Big Bell. When you were playing with the Pies. You used to live with each other?
Not quite. He lived with Josh Thomas, so not just around the corner.
You
but
were around a lot.
Yeah.
And with Tom Young?
Tom Young was floating around, not again, but in the circles,
Okay,
in that South Yarra circles.
Yeah, they were always lounging around. And then, we sort of lost touch. And when we both were looking for new homes, new AFL clubs, I still remember this day, and I think I've told the story a lot from my point of view, but I remember, getting this call, being like, can you be on a flight tomorrow? You're checking into the airport, you're going to go up to see GWS, have a meeting with Leon. I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. They're flying me out. This is cool. And I went to check in. And as I checked in, I typed my name. And then your name popped up as well. And I was like, oh, this is so embarrassing. Like, they've put two people there looking at the same time. They might have double booked us. Like, I thought that they had double booked us. But no, we're just both going up together.
Yeah. I remember sitting beside you on the flight up. Because I was nervous. I was like, we obviously just got the arse. Yeah. I'm like, got to impress to get a new job, essentially. And then you're there, and you chew my ear off. It's great, actually. I probably would chew your ear off.
Oh, we were both nervous. But I still remember that day. I think Dyl Addison picked us up from Sydney Airport. We drove out to Sydney Olympic Park, which I'd really rarely done Sydney before, and it was like, in a maze of I was just like, where the fuck are we going? Like, this is unbelievable. But I still remember that day to a T, and it was a scary time. What do you remember of that? Like,
Dyl picked us up, and then he did a little tour of the West Connects Centre there. Yeah, and it's slightly different to the Holden Centre, or what is it now, the AIA Centre, or whatever it is, which is decked out to the nines. And I remember asking him one stage, I was like, "Where's the pool?" And he's like, "Nah, no pool." I was like, "Yeah, I don't need that. Recovery's not for me anyway." But it was it's quite interesting, because nowadays I talk about I live in Surrey Hills, not far from the SCG, and I was like, it'd be nice if I could just sort of roll over to the SCG and have a run around. But obviously, enjoy my time at the Giants and wouldn't have it any other way. But it is, it's not west, but it's not Jake Stein Penrith West, but it's west.
It's west, but it's beautiful. We love West is best, as they say. It's funny with the Swans, and I don't want to harp on this for a while, but they, like a lot of the Giants guys, we all play out west. You guys play out west, but we all lived in the east. Whereas, we like a lot of us would live a kilometre from the SCG, and then all the Swans guys all live south, ages away from the SCG. I always found that so weird.
I remember when I was at back at the Pies days, I was living in South Yarra there, as we said, just near Boys Grammar, and it was like a 10-minute walk. And I thought, I'm not going any further than this. I actually bought a place in Elwood, and I was like, too far away. I'm not with them there. That's silly. And then now it's a good 45-minute stint to the to out where we train, but it gives me time to listen to the podcast, man. So or it used to be, and now Matt DeBoer moved into the Surrey Hills crew, and so we share rides all the time, and we just talk a lot of shit together, and my time's sort of taken away from the podcast a little bit, but I try to delve in as much as possible. Listen to Maxie's one on the way here.
It means a lot, because you are an elusive man when it comes to like social media. Really, like, you've been off socials for 3-4 years now. Like you're pretty much completely cut off from social media. Would you say?
I'd have Twitter. I don't.
That's weird, because that's like the worst platform to be on. Really,
there's some units on there. Like, there's some interesting characters.
Why would you be on Twitter? No one goes on Twitter.
Yeah, I just felt like I was spending way too much time on, and there was a lot of rubbish on Facebook. I don't know what it's like anymore.
I don't think anyone goes on
but
Facebook.
That's a good point. There you go. Instagram is, you should just spend a lot of time, and I see blokes at the club now spend like TikTok. They're just flicking fingers, man. It's like, this hours you go by, and you see a whole lot of crap. But Twitter, you can get pretty deep in Twitter. I use it more as like a news feed and like an information feed. I don't tweet a whole lot. I just retweet some bits and pieces that I think are cool, and most of the stuff that's pretty boring. But that's the only really social media I got, and which is I like to think I'm more a face-to-face kind of person, but I do miss out on like birthdays and that kind of stuff. That was what Facebook was usually used for.
Good for that. Mate, the reason I want to get you on today is because I love you. You know that.
Thanks, man.
And I love everything you're about. You're an incredible person. When I think of, people I've played with, I think of like their stories and, because sometimes I look back at my story and I was like, fuck, I probably could have tried harder because I was faced with this, but also, I was unlucky. But then you go to you and you're like a person that's had a similar career, but you've always come out better the other end. So I really admire the way you've been able to do that. And I think the story's not well known. I don't know anyone who would know that. So today, that's why I want to get on a show to sort of talk about your journey through the AFL and probably just, what you've learned through life. I still think you're like 27, but aren't you like 36 now? So like, how old are you at the moment?
I get that a little bit actually at the club. All the boys think, this is only 27. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Like, I feel like you probably get to a certain age where it's like, everyone thinks you're a bit younger. It's like, that's great. But I feel like, maybe I'm a bit mature, but I'll be 32 in a couple of weeks, April. So I'm now, I think Matt DeBoer's the oldest. He's got a month on me, and then Wardy's got a week on me, and then it's myself. So I used to laugh at those guys like Heath and Shane Mumford, who he would still be running around if it wasn't for his body, but he loves the cash, man, that bloke.
Oh, he loves the cash.
And so, I'm one of those older statesmen now, but it's still refreshing. I still really love, getting to the club, getting around the boys and learning off a lot of guys, continually learning, like these young guys are coming in now. It's a little bit different than when I first started, but, they give me a lot of energy and I still love the grind. I still love getting in, putting the work and getting better, basically.
All right, let's go back to the start then, because like I said, your story is really like no other, and I mean that when I say that, because you're a Brisbane boy, soccer background, drafted to the Pies as a Category B rookie, and played your first couple of seasons in the VAFA.
Yeah, pretty roundabout. So I grew up in Gympie, which is a couple of hours north of Brizzy, and then went to boarding school in Brisbane. Played soccer all my life, bit of touch footy, tennis. My mum was a tennis player. But like all kids, dabbled in just about every sport you could any excuse to pretty much get out of homework or any kind of schoolwork. But and so off to boarding school in year 10 because I was a bit of a shit. Dad was like, it's probably time. That's what happened to him. He got shifted off to boarding school when he was about the same age. So off I went to Brizzy, big rugby school. Still played soccer. Didn't really fit in with the rugby. I played one game of rugby, broke my nose, got headbutted and did my hammy. So I was like, that's probably not for me.
Union or league?
Union, big union school. John Eels was the John Eels grandstand, the Matt Hayden scoreboard. So there were some big names. Me not being one of them, but I used to play soccer and we were tucked away in this corner of the school. We get about 12 parents to the game, and all you could hear was the roars of the first 15, playing in the afternoon. So they'd get like 2,000 or 3,000 to a game because they got the old boys and quite a bit of a tradition. So I was quite the opposite, playing soccer. But I had a couple of mates who were boarders who were right into AFL, and so that was sort of my first taste of AFL. And at the time when I was going through sort of those early high school ages, was the Lions were doing their three-peat. So there was a bit of an idea of how it all worked, but not really too much love for it. I was always still soccer, and but these boys got me into it, and there was an opportunity to play school AFL, and it was on a Monday afternoon. And the only reason I said yes is because you get the last class on a Monday, you get off because you get on the bus and you got to get down. I was like, yep, that's me. And so I had a bit of run around, and just being sort of the height I was, and slightly athletic, it's sort of rubbed off on me a little bit. But it was still very interesting because you had a lot of rugby blokes just running around trying to bash each other essentially. Hundreds getting given away, 150 at one stage. One of the games got called off because it was all in brawls. I got caught in the middle of it. I don't like fights. Aren't for me, man. And I got walloped at one stage, and I got thrown in on it. So we got 60 detentions on Sundays. And anyway, it was like I said, it was a bunch of rugby guys trying to run around and show some masculinity. But took a liking to it, and I got these two mates that I still keep up with. One's a Swan supporter, one's a Freo supporter, and so they got me into it early days, and I mean, like that was the start of it, and then I similar to Nick's story actually, when he got called by Collingwood, I did a couple of trial sessions just with some rookie academies down in Brisbane, and I remember getting a call from Derek Hine, and being at boarding school, like prank calls are rife, like it was just on for young and old, and the boys had caught a bit of a wind that I'd do some trials and all that kind of stuff, and here's a call from Derek Hine, which I thought was one of the boys, so I just completely ignored it. Anyway, he's called me back, a day later, going, did you get the call, essentially, and then ended up going down there for a bit of a trial, did a few things with them, and then one thing led to another, through some the AIS programs and all that jazz, and was able to end up at the Pies as a Category B rookie. I didn't go through the draft process because I hadn't played before, so here's this 80 kilo kid who's same height as I am now, 6'8", and he, running into training, I'm like, what am I doing here? I didn't even know the rules. I didn't know, I had no idea. Genuinely no idea. I think there was a bit of, like I said, a little bit of athletic ability, but no idea of what was going on really.
And who was coaching at that stage, and who were some of the players that you sort of had, maybe if you even had known any, were you like going, oh fuck, now I'm teammates with these dudes? Yeah,
so it was a bit of a crash course early. Like obviously the big names like your Nathan Buckley's and these types, but Bucks had retired the year before. You still had your Scott Penderbury's, your Dale Thomas's, these types. So Mick was the coach at the time. But I was sort of joined at the hip with Alan Richardson, who was our development coach. And I actually still remember Brad Scott was there as a midfield coach the first year I was there. And essentially I wasn't allowed to train because he was like, you're not big enough. Like he's this... So I was just doing 2 days in the gym. So one in the morning, one in the arvo, on some interesting diets. I don't know if the nutrition coach would get a pass these days, but I was eating whole chickens, just some real sort of archaic stuff. And so that was for the first, 3 months of preseason. I was basically in the gym just doing my own
training.
I did some stuff with Alan Richardson, just like one-on-one, essentially, just basic skills. And then we just watched a lot of Vision because I got to learn the rules, learn how to play, learn. And so as the year unfolded, we'd go to we'd go and watch Friday night footy wherever it was at the game, and he'd just say watch this player rather than watch the game. I'd play on the Saturday, then we'd go Saturday night, go and watch another game. Then Sunday afternoon, if we'd had any energy left, we'd go and watch another game. So I was watching multiple games, a weekend just to learn how to play, essentially.
That's actually such a good point. I forgot that we even, I did that once or twice. Should have done it a lot more. Probably would have helped me. But for any kids that, kids always, or, anyone always messages me saying, what maybe do you wish you did more of? And I reckon that's actually is such a good point, is actually going to a game and not watching the game, watching players that you want to play like. I remember I did it 3 times and I got so much out of it, then just never did it again. Yeah.
So you sort of latch onto those guys at training that you think, oh, this is the guy that trains hard, or this is the guy that you want to be, or or this guy understands what it takes to become a proper AFL bona fide player. And so Pendles was the one early, he was the one that was doing the extra touch sessions, so you just sort of. Not that I play like Scott Penderbury, but he would go. I remember he would go early days. One of my first ones we went and watched was St Kilda, and he used to love Nick Dalsano, and so he'd just watch Nick Dalsano, and you can see the similarities to a certain extent. I don't even know if he was a Saints supporter early days, but he would watch him, and then there'd be certain ones. At the time, I was training as a ruckman, and so again, Richo, Gavin Brown was there as well. We'd go and watch these games. You'd go watch so and so, or when we're watching our games, watch Josh Fraser or. These types. So, and that was just a way to, again, learn how to learn the rules, but then learn how to, what it takes to be a player at AFL level, and, the skill sets and all that kind of stuff. So put in a lot of work early days, a lot of hours. And then because I wasn't officially on the list in my first year, I graduated in 2007, and come January, 2008, I was at the club, so it was sort of like a quasi year not on the list. I was working at the club as well, so I'd train in the mornings and then work there all afternoon.
Doing what?
Oh, whatever they had for me, really, like merchandise shop, a little bit of sponsorship. I was coding games for players, that kind of stuff. So that was interesting.
Fuck. That it's like extremely humbling from a beginning, isn't it? Like, as in, a lot of people wouldn't do that.
Yeah, well, it was sort of, I think it was more legally they couldn't, because I wasn't on a list, they couldn't pay me as a player.
Right.
And so I had to work essentially to get paid. And we were lucky enough in the first year, we had Collingwood had a first year house. And at the time it was, free rent, essentially free food, or there was like a budget. And so here I am. I've never the only work I did was a bit of, the paper run with my parents who own a news agency, and so I hadn't really worked a day in my life, just did school all the way through. And then here's this 17-year-old kid making, more than, he's $10 a week pocket money. And so I was just like, I'll do whatever. I had no idea that there was any other way, essentially. And I remember some of the boys at home would be like, what are you doing that shit for? I'm like, oh, well, let's just get told to do it. I'll just do it, that's how it worked. But I just felt like at the early days I spent hours at the club. Hours. And then, as you alluded to, I played a little bit of AFA. Essentially, I wasn't good enough to play VFL. I was just nowhere near it. And then I went and Jeff Walsh at the time, who was the GM of footy. His sons, a couple of his sons, played at Old Trinity in the VAFA. So I went down there and spent a bit of time down there. And I think halfway through a year, I got dropped from the seniors at VAFA, and they weren't that good either. Like they were A grade. But it was like bottom three. And so they were going to get relegated. I think they got relegated in the end. And so I was just running around like I had this chook down there, again, trying to learn how to play footy. Got dropped to the 19s. And we ended up winning 19s premiership, which is quite funny.
Unbelievable.
I got the medal somewhere around there. But and then that was towards the end of the season. And then I was lucky enough through the AFL gave me permission to play like the last 3 games of the VFL season. I remember my first game, Cardinia Park, absolute pouring rain, and here I am in the ruck. It's Trent West and Shane Mumford. I think I had 1 hit out and 3 touches for the game. And at one stage, I tried to don't argue Shane Mumford, and he ate me alive, man. I got pretzeled hard.
Did he remember that when you came back?
No, I've mentioned it to him before, and he just sort of giggles. Yeah. I don't think I don't remember it. I definitely remember it, but he ate me alive, and then I was just like, this is probably not for me. This stuff, like I'm clearly not up to it, and I'm thinking they probably don't think I'm up to it as well. Then I can't even remember the last 2 games, so I think I played all right in the last 2 and somewhat deserved, or they saw enough in me to give me another year. But interesting first year. I did, and I also played a little bit of early in the year. I only just remember now, but I was playing. I ended up playing for Queensland, so I went back and played Sunny Coast Power because I was from Sunny Coast. This is pre-VAFA.
Yeah.
And then end up playing in the state champs with Queensland. There was Div 2 state champs at the time. This is before Allies.
Yes.
And so I ended up playing with guys like, Dave Beams, Charlie Dixon, Zach Smith. We actually had quite a good team, but we got smashed every game. Mitch Robinson was running around for Tassie. It was quite funny.
I remember this. Yeah, I remember this was when Gold Coast.
This is when the Gold Coast was starting to do their thing, and so all those guys end up rolling into the Gold Coast team.
I actually played against the Gold Coast in TAC Cup.
When they were when their first year. Yeah.
Super scary.
So I did just about everything in my first year. Worked at the club, played local footy back home, VFL, VAFA. I travelled the world essentially.
It doesn't actually surprise me at all hearing that. I knew a little bit of that. I didn't know 90% of it, but you don't. And it's one thing that's a credit to you is you don't have an ego. Like, do you think that sort of held you in good stead? I think it obviously has. It
was definitely ingrained in me by my man. Like that's the way he operates, and so you get the you see it happen every day. You see it unfold. So you naturally gravitate. You're probably a bit just as much like your old man. You probably don't even know it. Although I was a bit of a shit at school, I ended up like I said, I was high school in Gympie and had every intention of graduating there, and then just was a bit of a thought I was too cool for school kind of thing. I wasn't wasn't a highly intelligent guy. I was, I was a C student, B, C student, if I was lucky, bit of a smart ass, and then had a bit of run-in with a couple of teachers that, I wasn't fans of, and they probably weren't fans of me, and then Dad thought, best to not ship him off, but off to boarding school to learn, a few things. And when I got there, it was a bit of an eye opener because I was sort of a nobody again. I didn't have any friends. I was just like, yes sir, no sir. And so that was a humbling experience, and that taught me a lot of a lot of good things. How to act as just a human being towards people, and respect and all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't a going to get suspended kind of guy, but I was a bit of a smart ass, and that definitely put me on the straight and narrow. And I think if I didn't leave Gympie and go to Brizzy, then there wouldn't have been opportunity to do the footy. And it's funny how it all snowballs and how you get to the point you are.
Yeah. When did it all change for you at Collingwood? Was there like a moment you go, fuck, like maybe I can actually do this?
Yeah. So it took it was funny because all the way through, you think, you look at a certain player and you go, geez, I could do that, but I probably couldn't do that. And so it was a bit of a slow burn. A lot of people say, overnight success and all of that. I didn't play till I was 21. I think it was my third. It was essentially my fourth year. And so it took a bit of time for me to sort of, get up to scratch to play AFL footy. I played a lot of ruck early days, and then I talked about Alan Richardson being my development coach, and then he ended up going to Carlton, doing some line coach. Then I had Luke Beveridge as my next development coach, and he taught me how to play backline. He had an interesting way, and you can see how the Dogs play now with being aggressive positioning, all that kind of stuff. And he taught me how to play backline. Essentially, he was the one that sort of was like, "Oh, ruck's probably not for you." And then so you have a crack at the back.
Leon's still not. He still doesn't listen to those.
Well, yeah, I think it changes his mind every week, but. So so he ended up teaching me how to play back on, and so started to play some pretty good footy. But then the Pies were getting pretty good at that stage. Like 2009, I think we lost in an elimination final against St Kilda, and then obviously 210 panned out the way it was, and I was playing some pretty decent ball, but we were obviously a good team, still a rookie, and so didn't get the opportunity, and then didn't debut until sort of around 15 in 2011 or whatever it was, and it was ended up being a forward ruck. That's because Chris Dawes got injured, and I was sort of that next tall, I guess. But playing in those teams were pretty interesting. Like that was hard to be no good at footy in that team. Like the ball got kicked to you, and you were just one. I think my first game we won by 120 points against North in the wet. Like that team was just operating in all cylinders at the time, and it was good fun to be a part of. Like.
What do you remember from that team? Like, what sticks out the most playing in such a, as we said, Collingwood was super dominant then. Mick Malthouse coach. Was he still coach then, or was that the transition of Buckley?
That was his last year. 2011 was his last year.
Yeah.
So, obviously, I was part of 210, obviously training on it and, being part of the squad. Mick had this funny thing where you get to finals. And he'd pick a final squad. So you knew where you're at. And Keefe didn't make the cut for the 2010 final squad.
So explain that, because I've been not on this cut as well. This is like at the end of the year, there's a grand final. Obviously, 22 play. You normally have 27 maybe as a list, like a squad go into it, but then they might have 30 or 32 that train as a squad, and the rest of the 10 or 13 people, they just go home. They're finished for the year.
Yeah, essentially. So at the time, I think we had 47 players on the list. Yeah. And then it just got to finals, and the twos didn't make finals, and he just went, well, Dyl, you can go on holidays. Keefe, you can go on holidays. Luke round, see you later. And so he just cut it down to about 30-ish. Yeah. And
which
then
is crazy when you think about
it. Hilarious. He was like, well, I don't want you to fuck up training.
Yeah.
Essentially. And so everyone else was just, smooth, training would be, humming and,
do you know how much that meant to me though because that was my only finals experience I'd had before getting to the Giants. And I just had to go home, and it was never a part of it. And then when we came to the Giants, I remember, we didn't win the grand final, but I was so a part of that week. I felt like I was nearly the most important person, just to get the morale up for everyone. I was still out there the whole time.
Yeah, it was that was a great experience being part of it. Obviously, it didn't work out the way we wanted it, but just being a part of that week was awesome. Like I got to get in the car with Shorey in the parade. I was like, how good's this? Even though I got berated by all the Richmond units, but no, it was funny. Like so 210, I didn't make the squad, and then end up coming back for the grand finals. You know, like the drawn, and then come back for again, and the week later. So that was interesting. And again, I just knew that's just how it worked. 211. On the flip side, I played my first couple of games. I think I played 5, and then got dropped for finals. Dorsey came back, took his spot back, and that was how it worked. But I did make the finals squad, but even then, it was like, all right, you guys go over the side, do some lane work for 45 minutes. Yeah. And us 22 will do our thing, and so that was quite funny, but it was awesome to be a part of, because that's when the Pies were humming, and you were getting like 5,000 or 6,000 people to train it. Like it was crazy, mental. But good fun. Those grand final experiences were great.
The next few years, you sort of put yourself as a staple in the team. You actually in the leadership group as well. What year was that?
Oh, I couldn't even tell you what year that was. I spent a year in there. It was Pendle's first year as skipper. Yeah, which
in itself is an incredible feat, as we know your story now. To go from that to being in the leadership group does say a lot about your character.
Yeah, well, I think it was one of those ones where the leadership group was like, 8 or 9.
Yeah, okay.
And we sort of
don't undersell it.
Yeah. Well, I did feel like I have some some good characteristics to be a leader. Like there's leaders aren't in one mold, but I feel like I've got some some good characteristics to provide to as part of the squad. But that was a bit of an eye opener as well. Like that was Pendle's first year as captain. Bucks was really trying to put his stamp on how we wanted to play and what the squad looked like, and post the Malthouse era. And so that we went from grand finals, and then start to slowly slip, not off the cliff, but just going backwards slightly. So that was it was interesting just to have those conversations, be in those conversations with for lack of a better word, the big boy conversations, and you're across information that you wouldn't otherwise be privy to, and you just felt like you had to give more to the team and come out of yourself more. But that was a good experience, and Pendle's was in there, and then you had guys like Luke Ball and Nick Maxwell was still part of the leadership group, and just impressive leaders that you can learn off basically.
Your career is looking really good. Obviously, from where you've come from, you're in the leadership group, you're playing consistent senior footy. Unfortunately, you go down with a knee. Is that at the end of that year?
Yeah. So 2012, I played the first 9 games, and we had Ben Reed was injured. Nathan Brown got injured, and it was a sort of a next man up sort of again set up. But I felt like I was playing good footy for those first 9 rounds, and then did my knee over in Adelaide at the old Amy Park there, and then obviously missed the rest of the season. But that was disappointing, because I was felt like I was getting going. That was my first sort of action of consistent action in the senior side, and then I was able to come back the year after. Around, I think 12 months to it was 12 months to the day that I came back and played in the reserves. And then I ended up bruising my kidney pretty bad, like slight restoration of the kidney. So I just spent obviously 12 months in the gym trying to get, big enough. And as I said, I was like this skinny, I've always been this skinny kid. And so I got to a decent size. I think I got to about 104 kilos, and then I played on Danaher when he was playing at the Bombers that day. And then right at the end of the game, just fell on his leg and innocuous hit, and I spent the next week in hospital. Oh. Then I got back down to a 94 kilos, so I was pretty flat. I lost 10 kilos, and then it took me a couple of weeks to get going again. But then I ended up getting back in the team for the last part of the season, and played the last 8 games, or not 10 games, or whatever it was. And then rolled over into the next year, which so that was my leadership year, I'm pretty sure. And then the next year after that, I didn't get picked for round 1, and then Nath Brown hurt his shoulder again, I think. And then I was able to play like 18 games from there. And so starting to get a bit of a roll on, starting to feel part of it, bit of continuity, never feel safe or never feel like you're a finished product, but, starting to understand how the game worked and felt more comfortable at that level. And then pre-season the next year, Bucks gives me a call and was like, we're thinking about going to play a forward ruck. And so I'm like, here we go. Try to wrap my head around that. And then ended up playing the whole season, pre-season, as a forward ruck. And then that was when I got the tap on the shoulder. Or I was knocking the door at 6 o'clock in the morning from the guys from Masada. So that was that pre-season. And then one thing led to another. And here, 2 years later, I spent a bit of time out of the game.
Fuck. So for those who maybe don't know the story, are you happy to go into it? You give us a bit of a rundown of what that story is and go into it?
Yep.
Yeah. Have you spoken about this publicly before?
I don't know about publicly because I haven't really I just probably haven't had the forum, but I'm happy to tell the story. It's not hiding anything. I think everything got played out, to a certain extent in the media anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was the week before the season started, and we went out. A few boys. I was injured at the time. I hurt my calf, and so I was driving. We'd had a club function at the I think it was the Brunswick Bowls Club. Ended up driving a few boys home from there at whatever time, and then end up going to bed. And then I get a knock on the door at 6 o'clock in the morning or whatever it was, and I'm like, I'm not answering that. And it was just constant beating. I was like, here we go, and get to the front door and a couple of guys in suits, and I'm like half asleep still. Those guys roll in and they're like, oh, from Masada. I'm like, oh, here we go. I haven't done one of these before. One of those home tests that you hear about. Get them a drink of water, sit them down. I got this tiny little apartment. He's sitting on the couch. He's sort of sitting on this makeshift chair. And then he starts rolling out. He's like, so you've tested positive to blah. I couldn't even remember what he said, but clenbuterol in the end. And I was like, oh, yeah, well, I haven't.
So is this straight after the test, or was this a test that you had earlier?
No, so the test was like 3 months earlier.
Right, so this was ages ago, the test.
Yeah, so I can't remember the exact dates, but it was about a month or two, maybe even 3 months.
At the club?
At the club, yeah.
Right.
And so test was done. Didn't think people, we get tested all the time. Didn't think anything of it.
And to probably give context in that too, because I'm just remembering this now as well. There's 2 different tests that we do.
Yeah,
one's illicit, one's WADA, which is like anti-doping. That's a more serious one where they actually watch you piss out of your genitals. Yeah. You literally have to show them your dick and you actually do it.
Yeah.
And that one's for WADA, SADA, and the other one is just for a Dorich AFL illicit drug test.
Yeah, so they also do they take blood samples sometimes, the SADA and WADA, or SADA, which comes under the WADA banner, but and Dorich is the other one that does the illicit drug test ones. And so they're pretty constant, every couple of weeks they're in there.
Always.
And you might get done, once every 2 or 3 months or whatever it is.
I remember when they used to come to me, I was like, mate, if I'm on performance enhancing drugs, I've got serious problems right now.
I need to get my money back for whatever, all that kind of stuff. But So I get this knock on the door early in the morning, and then they run through the whole rigmarole of you've tested positive. And then at the time I was so frazzled that I was like, well, I haven't. And so you got that wrong.
Yeah.
So I ended up calling Neil Balm at the time, who was the GM, and I'm like, oh, so these guys are rocked up and they're telling me that I'm, positive, and I'm like, well, I haven't, and he's going, oh shit. And then so I was like, oh, I'll come to the club, I'll have to hand my phone in, and even then I was so early in the morning and I just had no idea what was going on. I just wasn't thinking straight. And then they're like, oh, do you know where Josh Thomas is? I was like, oh, I assume he's at home somewhere. And then, so I ended up, they're like, oh, can you show me where he lives? So I ended up driving them around to Josh's house. Sorry, they go, he's not at home. I was like, oh, he might be at his girlfriend's house. And so I ended up driving to her house because they live just around the corner in Toorak. So and even then I'm like, what's going on here? I just had no real grasp of, the magnitude of what was happening. Get into the club and Barmy's like, asked me a couple of questions, and I'm trying to put it all together, and I'm like, because they give me dates what'd you do on this time and what'd you do on that date, and I was like, I don't know what I did yesterday, mate. I got no idea. And then had to hand my phone in as well, so they had this post the whole Essendon thing too. So they the government had given ASADA all these powers to, take things, and so they're able to take my phone, and one thing led to another, and then I'm just sitting there, and then it all started to hit me like, oh, okay, I might know the train of, what happened and all that jazz. So then I'm just sitting in my room. I drove home after that, just waiting for my phone to get home. I don't know what to do. I'm just sitting there. And then a few people had caught wind at this stage, and then a couple of the boys had come over. My manager was there. Joshy was, he's come around after they eventually tracked him down, and so it all just sort of hit me. And then it was like pretty quick transition from like telling the club, talking to the club, talking to Barmy, talking to my manager, and then all of a sudden it was like, well, we're probably going to need a lawyer here. And then so we end up teaming up with one of the guys who had some experience with the Essendon saga. And then it was like, basically it was like trying to keep all the information to yourself, or not to yourself, but like, let's try to keep it in house so we can control this to a certain extent. So then I had just almost no communication with the club from then on in for a good amount of time before we tried to wrap our heads around what was going on. And so the whole saga went for quite a while. When's that? Like late March or whenever it was, just before round one, and we ended up not accepting our ban until like nearly just pre-finals. Like, so it was, sort of went for a whole year, but we weren't allowed, for a long time, as I said, we weren't allowed to have contact with the club, which is kind of, it's not ideal for them because they're out in the, they need some information. They'd like some information. Here's Buck's trying to communicate with us, and he's just trying to help. We can't really tell him, all the information that he potentially wants, or would be helpful for him, and so I felt like a bit of an idiot in that regard. But a lot of the boys at the club were, understanding to a certain degree, and were stick by us, and I ended up spending the whole year. I think Joshy ended up going back to Queensland pretty quickly, but I ended up spending the whole year in Melbourne, just because I started doing my MBA after that. So my thought process through the whole time was like, well, I don't want to waste. Once I realised that it was probably going to be that 2-year ban, I was like, well, I don't want to waste the 2 years. I want to be able to, And at the time as well, I was like, well, probably not going to play footy again. And so what's next, kind of thing. And then, so I started the MBA. I was lucky enough that I'd finished my undergrad already, and got stuck into that. And then one thing led to another. Again, I'm not too sure of the time frame, but it looked like that we'd potentially be able to get back into the AFL system. And so that was reassuring, because you knew you had some sort of path set out for the next couple of years. Whereas on the flip side, if it wasn't back in the AFL system, it would have been, uni and then what's next kind of thing. So I was able to, it gives you a bit of peace of mind that you can, structure, something that looks like, or where you're going to be in a couple of years' time, and then fill in the blanks kind of thing.
Through that time of like the shit hitting the fan, becoming public, Collingwood the biggest club, like I can remember how big that was in the AFL. What was like? How did you deal with that mentally? Like, how were you in that time? Were you all right?
Yeah, I wasn't too bad. Like, it was funny because again, it was all, some of it was quite surreal, and then it's like I haven't been in these situations before, and one thing that probably helped is that unfortunate for him, but like fortunate for myself, that Josh was part of it as well. Yeah. Like, and so you sort of feel like you're going through it. You're obviously going through it together, and you're in this. It's just the same playbook for him. And so you've got him. You've got your family, extended family. You got your friends who are sticking by you. They just understand that what you did was a mistake, and actually the hardest bit was calling me old man. Yeah, I was shitting myself, and so I ended up I called Mum first. So I went the easy way out first. And I was like, oh, Mum, when Dad gets home, tell him that, I got to talk to him, blah, blah. And then I ended up talking to Dad, and he's like, you did what? I was like, I had, I did some drugs. And he's like, you got an issue? I was like, oh, no, I've just only a handful of times, and I shouldn't have done that. And, I won't do it again. And he's like, all right, no worries. Get on with it, kind of thing. And he was pretty good in a way. Like, I think he was just worried, again, for my health, to start with. Like, if you got an issue, like, let's get on top of it. And then, quickly turned to, all right, well, what's next? You know, how can we help, kind of thing. And so my family were great, friends were great. Joshy was obviously calm head as well, manager. The AFLPA were great at the time too, lawyer. So I just had a great bunch of people around me to steer me through the situation. As I said, early days, it was, your mind just boggles. Like, you're just a bit frazzled, you don't know. And these guys just set out this path, you know, like, there's no real playbook for that because it was sort of one of the first ones, but set about a bit of a playbook, and I just sort of, you know, step by step, just rolled it out, and it was, you know, easy enough in the end. And I haven't told too many people this, but I've really enjoyed those 2 years. Like, two of my, you know, most enjoyable years that I've had. You know, was able to travel to the States at the end of that first season, and then me and Josh were able to go to do European summer as well. So it was like, it wasn't all doom and gloom. And what I did was, like, obviously you cop what you get, because you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. But was lucky enough that I got to start my MBA, put a lot of time and effort into that, travel, go. You know, I was moving back into, like, the second year I moved back to Queensland, I was moving back into home at 27. I think most people move out at 27. I was moving back in. And so that was great. I got to hang out with sisters. I got 4 younger sisters, so they got to hang out with them. You know, that you only see 2 or 3 times a year. So I was seeing them every week, and, you know, just catching up with fam. It was just great. It was, I really enjoyed the time, to be honest.
Yeah, it's funny because I hate that we're. I hope that this story today isn't the hero of this show, of this podcast, because it's a small story in your story, but it's also really important because I wanted to show that there's such another side to you that people might not have seen. And it annoys me that maybe, and this is a question in here somewhere, is like, has it ever annoyed you? Because I know it annoys me, and not that this is something that a lot of people would think, or I'm not sure what people would think, but that is connected to you, because I can think of a million other people that this story suits better. Like, it just doesn't, knowing you and hearing you speak today, and people understand this, like, that just isn't you. And what I'm trying to say is, like, is that something that, you know, frustrates you, or have you taken the better side from it, like you said, and gone, now fuck it, I'm going to learn from it, commit to my MBA and become a better person off field? Yeah,
well, it doesn't really bother me at all, to be honest. You know, people can think what they think. People can form their own opinions, but what matters most to me is the people that are close to me, like, you know, yourself and my family members and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like if people truly know you, then that'll shine through with the people that matter the most in a certain way. And I just don't buy into any, you know, I don't know who says that. Like, it was funny because I get a few barbs still across the boundary line every now and again, which it kind of makes me laugh. Yeah, because it's, you know, I remember one of my first games back, I was playing in the twos at the Holden Centre there, and it was against Box Hill. I think Mitch Lewis actually took me for he was one of his first years or something like that, and he started playing some pretty good footy. He kicked like 2 or 3 in a quarter, and the Box Hill boys were behind the goal, and they were just giving it to me, and I couldn't help but laugh, because what are you going to do? Like, it's, you know, that's all part of it. But even when I go and pay the Pies nowadays, some of the Pies supporters, you know, you get stuck in me about that. But, like, I mean, you make your bed, you sleep in it, kind of thing, and it's water off a duck's back for me, because it's just, I really don't care what people think. That's, you know, and we've never had this chat before about this, and not because like it's been weird or anything, just because, like, I don't think it's necessary. But it's funny hearing you say that, because it, like, in me in that situation, or anyone else in that situation, I feel like people would really care, and it's admirable that you have been able to keep that, like, that mindset. Yeah, and maybe because, like, well, at the time you played for Collingwood, big club. Yeah. So there's that. There was also at the time the Essendon drug saga was still going, so we were almost put in the, like, whatever. Like, it was sort of it was like the you know, after first couple of weeks it was like, whatever, Essendon's still doing their thing, you know. And so there was that. And then I kept a pretty low profile. I mean, I remember the first week, actually, I lived in this little 2-bedroom apartment on the first floor, just in South Yarra, and there was 2 ways to get in and out. There's, like, our front door, and then there was, like, you could go through the other apartment building and go through the back door. It was just this old Art Deco kind of thing. And the first week, I remember leaving my house, like, first day, and there was media at the front of the house. I'm like, what is these guys doing here? And they're trying to run out, and then I'll get on my bike and I just drive right off. I was going to, because Jossie just lived across Faulkner Park there. And for a week after that, I was like, I'm not going through the front door again, because they were still out. I was like, what? Come on, guys. Yeah, I get it, but like, and I don't know how they got my address. Like, how did people find that shit out? I don't know. But I was going out the back door, and I just remember thinking, like, these guys probably think I'm a hermit crab. Yeah. I come out. I was spending the whole week doing whatever I wanted because I was going out the back door, and these poor, I don't even know who it was job it was. Just got to stalk someone. I was just like, poor people have got to do that. But and maybe like me and Josh were kind of small fry in a way. Like we're not big names. Not some of the better players in the comp. So it's sort of maybe that was a bit whatever. Josh again moved back to Queensland pretty early. I spent just that first sort of 8 to 9 months in Melbourne, and then ended up moving back to Queensland in the second for the second year anyway. And it was just sort of like business as usual, because you're back home, you're living with parents, no one knows what footy is up there anyway. To a certain extent, it was like you keep close eye on your team and how the boys are going, and we were just training away in the background.
Has there been a moment in your career where you've realised something the most? Like it might have been that time or another time where you've just learnt something about yourself and been like, fuck, this has been a good experience? Or like, what have you taken out of it? Not
so much. Like I've pride myself in sort of just being pretty level-headed at all times. Like obviously, like that's a bit of a curveball, and you got to deal with it. But again, I was just so lucky to have good people around me that just like steer me on the straight and narrow in a lot of regards. Almost like set out some goals from like once I realised, all right, 2-year ban.
What's next?
Like how am I going to become a bit like not a better person, but like how am I going to make most of it? How am I going to here's an opportunity to do some things that I might not have been able to do, travel, see the world, do my MBA, really knock that over, from almost like a full-time perspective rather than a part-time as you would be able to do if you were playing footy. So, and that was really challenging actually, just doing the MBA, because I'm not the smartest or the brightest guy going around. I just feel like I put enough time and effort into something that you get enough out of it.
Well, how many players in the AFL would have finished an MBA?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I don't know what the number is, but I assume it's quite tough, only because if you do your undergrad as a part-time undergrad, it takes a long time. Like however many units.
How long has it taken you?
Well, my undergrad was I don't know if it was a little bit backdoor, like AFL early days, just doing some interesting, do a subject here, do a subject there. Did some full days, a lot of stuff in the off season. So I was lucky enough to finish my undergrad. It would have taken me 5 years, and then I was able to start the MBA, which was essentially 3 years full time, but it took me about 4 years. I did those 2 years basically full time, and then when I got to the Giants, I was able to do it on a part time basis. But it was lucky enough because it was all online that, I could do that, and so I was able to finish in the back end. I finished it, just at the end of my first year at the Giants. So lucky enough, and then I've sort of gone back and done bits and pieces since then. But I mean, it was definitely tough. Like it was just a lot of hours. I can appreciate those guys that do it, doing their job and then have to do an MBA at 9 o'clock at night. I was lucky enough that I didn't. It was basically my job at the time, and so it took me. You putting. Again, I'm not the smartest guy, so it's more mine's more a time spent rather than a real efficiency.
I think you're underselling yourself. Before we get into what's next for you, I want to just talk about your Giants journey over the last sort of, how long have you been? 4 years now? It's your 4th season or 5th?
4 or 5.
It's unbelievable.
Sort of lose track.
Did you think like that meeting that day that when we talk about now, they obviously picked you over me? I don't think we were competing for the same role. It's fair to say, but that day that we went up together, and I remember getting the call back from Leon a couple of days later, and he called me and goes, "Am I, mate?" I was like, "Yeah, good." He goes, "Yeah, we're going to go with Keeffe." I was like, "Okay, fantastic." I was like, "Yeah, no, it's probably a good call, to be honest. It fits a bit better. You've been there for 5 years and you've done incredible things." But yeah, I think it's been like nearly a whole new, I don't know, from an outside perspective, the way you've been able to like fit into that club, have the respect from the playing group that you do, which I know you do, and I've been lucky enough to see how much everyone loves you. Not just loves you, but like the play. I've never seen a player that doesn't like suck up to coaches be like more respected with coaches? Is it because you're like 35 that you can, I don't know, relate to these guys, but you just have such good relationships with everyone at the footy club? Was that, what I'm trying to say is, did you learn that from probably your time off in footy, or was it just, you just rocked up and being like, this is what I want to be and this is who I am?
Oh, I think that was ingrained in me early days from the old man.
Yeah.
Like just a respect thing. Like you're never always going to agree with the coaches. Like, like if I was there, if I was in match committee and I'm picking the team and like, so the team that runs out this weekend, my team that I pick is not going to be the same as Leon's.
No.
Like I dare say, and everyone else has got their own opinions, and 90% of it's probably the same, and you know, even like the way we potentially play or whatever, that kind of stuff. But in the end of the day, like the coach is the guy that picks, he picks the team, or the line coach tells you how the back line wants to play this week, or the matchups or whatever. And you just, that's, I mean, you know, getting rid of hierarchy, it's just a respect thing. Like and so my whole thing all along was, this is your role. This is you got to play it. And I think, especially if you know, in a team environment, like I think not coaches gravitate towards that, but it makes their job probably a lot easier. It does. You know, I just feel like I've always been that way, so it's just natural for me. It's not like, it's not a hard thing to do. It's not, it's like, oh, Liam wants me to do this. You know, just do it. Yeah, and it comes back to the point, like, you know, if you've got two blokes that dropped out of the team and they're playing in the twos, and one's there with a good attitude that will do anything to get back in, or you've got the other bloke, probably me, sooking why they're not, you know, getting a game or not getting an opportunity, they're always going to go back to the bloke they can trust that's got the good attitude. Yeah, and also like... and so that's what I saw and admired most, you know, from you, because you'd often never really start the year, but you'd always finish it. Yeah. And I think that's on a list, when you've been on a list in a long time, and you have, and I was on a list for 8 years, you never want to play the first 10 games. You always want to play the last 10, because that's when it really matters, and that's when the contracts are handed out, and that's when they pick the real team. Yeah. You clearly want to play all year, but... Yes, sorry. I think I've only played a handful of round ones. Like, I think it's my 14th year or 15th year or whatever it is. And, I mean, with a couple off in the middle, but... and I've only played 3 or 4 round ones. And so... But, like, I started from so far back, like, soccer kid, he's 80 kilos, coming in, you know, trying to learn the game. Didn't even know what out of the bounds 4 was, you know, like, and then so I feel like I'm still not even a finished product. You know, I'm 32 now, and that's, you know, when, you know, age is an interesting topic in AFL circles or in sporting circles in general. But I still feel like I'm playing the best footy I have, you know, and feel stronger than I have, fitter than I am, you know, like, and so there's no, you don't put a ceiling on yourself, like in terms, or like, there's always this constant pursuit of trying to get better, like whatever that looks like, you know, like the game evolves, you play different positions, you always get stronger, you can always get fitter, you know, like that's why I love playing sport, because you're at the highest level, and we're talking about the smallest percentages here, and you're just trying to gain some sort of, you know, advantage over your teammates and your opposition. And just finding out things about yourself that you just didn't think were capable of, you know, like, and so I love surrounding myself with people who like getting after it, and, you know, like challenging themselves and want to get the best out of themselves. So. And that's like a knowledge thing too. That's why I liked, you know, that's why I did the MBA, and you and I, it was a bit of a joke. We always read books. I love reading books. I love learning about stuff, you know, random, you know, whether it's, you know, finance or philosophy or, you know, psychology, nutrition, whatever it is. I just sort of like taking it all in, and, you know, I thought I knew it all at 25, but I'm now 30, nearly 32, and I know how far away I'm, you know, from so many subjects and so many meeting new people, learn new things. You know, I just love taking it all in footy or anything. But what's been something you're most proud of yourself with? What would you say? Is anything stand out to you? Like the NBA is obviously a big one, but if you that old cliche, you told myself, you know, that 17-year-old kid who's graduating is going to do an undergrad, do the masters. I went back and did another graduate course in applied finance. Then he's that kid that played soccer when he was 17, and I've only chalked up 80 odd games, but I've, you know, 14, 15 years on a list, still going, 32. You know, like when I got the ask from the Pies the first time, I was like, oh, 8 years, 9 years, that's not bad. You know, like I'm pretty chuffed with that. Yeah. You know, again, from the kid who, you know, grew up in Gympie that knew nothing about, you know, didn't even know what a latte was or a focaccia. Actually, I got a funny story about my first, if we can backtrack, but my first day at the Pies, Nick Maxwell invited me to lunch. Like, this is good. You know, Maxie, I've seen that he's got respect already. Like, he's one of the, you know, I think he was 25 at the time, whatever. Yeah, come to lunch. You know, I was like, yep, no worries. And it was like me, him, Nathan Brown, and then we went there and it was like, you know, a couple of the oldest crew, like Shane Wakelands, your Ryan Loneys, and then Bucks was there as well. And I'm looking at the menu and I'm like, I don't even, like, Gympie doesn't even have cafes. Yeah. They got Macca's and they got KFC, you know. I'm like looking at this menu, I'm going, focaccia, what's that? And he's like, oh, it's, you know, you get chicken schnitzel, put a bit of bread on it, a bit of, I was like, yeah, all right, that sounds good. So come out, there's the old Cheeky Monkey on Swan Street. And it's got, you know, the focaccia, it's got the chips, and I'm like, you know, worries. And then Bucks is there, and he's like, "Are you going to eat that?" I'm like, "Of course I'm going to eat it, man. I'll just order it. What do you think?" I'm like, "I'm going to eat it." And at the time, I didn't even know he's having a cheeky dig at me because he's like, "You don't eat chips. You're a professional footballer." And I'm like, "What do you mean, dude? I don't even know what nutrition is, you know." And so that was like, and looking back, I'm like, he's a bloke who's, you know, trying to set the standard early, you know, like, and here I am, not even what a focaccia is.
Yeah.
I don't even know what a latte is, and I don't even know that chips are bad for you. So, and then turn full circle now, yeah. Now I'm having
fighting machine.
LSA and hemp seeds on my wheat bix, you know, like there's just little things like that.
Hey, one thing I love talking about is what's next for you, what's next in life, because as you said, you've probably still got another 5 years left, but you can always tell, and now that I'm out of the game, I feel like you can always sort of look back on your career and you can always tell guys that are going to go well post-footy. And it's not necessarily the best players. It's actually sometimes quite the opposite, because it's the ones that have had to fight and hustle and do study outside of it. And a lot like Matt de Boer, I'm extremely excited for your transition out of footy, because I know it's going to be even bigger and better than your footy career has, and that's saying something because it's been incredible. What's your goals for outside footy, and what do you want to sort of get into? Where are you at? I don't even know what an NBA fucking means, to be honest. So you're gonna have to really.
I don't even know if it matters anymore.
Yeah,
does it?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, so like I've done it a little bits and pieces, and I don't know. To answer your question straight up, I don't actually know too much. Like, I know exactly what I want to do. But again, like align myself with these people like Matt de Boer. Like, you just like, again, he's another guy. Played X amount of games at Freo, come over here, done really well. He's now played 200 something plus games. Like, he's just a machine. Like, and a lot of people would just look at, you know, who don't know him. And I think I was definitely one of these guys. Like, I'm like Matt de Boer, that bloke from Freo, he sucks.
Yeah, literally.
And then he gets to the club, and you're like, geez, he's a good fella. And it actually hurts you to say, oh, like, he's a really good fella.
I know, I hated him.
Like he uses the terminology like leveling up. Like, I feel like I'll level it up just because I met him. You know, like, people like this are like just bring you so much energy, and this bloke's always on. Like, he's always on, and he's always after it. And I'm like, and then I look back and go, well, what am I doing? You know, like, if he can do it, like, you know, like, and then so you're trying to level up, just trying to follow him, you know. And so, like, I've been blessed with, you know, meeting a lot of people like that along the way. You know, Nick Maxwell you had on the other day, like, just a superhuman. Learnt so much from him in terms of leadership and just how to go about it as a, you know, good human. People like Matt de Boer, even Josh Thomas is like, he's doing great things now. He's essential.
Did he move to New York and do some stuff? Is he?
He did a bit of. He was fortunate enough to meet a guy in Boston that works at a venture capital firm. He went over there and he's just done a sort of 3-month internship over there. Wow. Paid his way, but put himself in a financial situation where he's able to basically take, you know, 6 months to a year off and have no issue about doing that, and be able to go and again pay his way over to Boston, get the experience. Come back, hopefully, you know, not hopefully, he'll find a way. Like, you just know the guys, as I said, will find a way. Like I feel like I'll be, if I continue to get after it and you know, look to improve and learn and all that kind of stuff, I just feel like everything will work out. Again, it's I'm not entirely sure what I want to do. And COVID's thrown a bit of a spanner in the works, as I'm looking to do, because I've done all the theory to a certain extent. I mean, again, you're always learning, but I was looking to do some internships, and COVID obviously threw that out, and now a lot of people work from home, so it's hard to actually go in, and they're not at the same time. But I'm trying to work through that at the moment, and with footy still being the priority, I'd like to think I got still a couple of good years left in me, hopefully 2, 3, 4, that kind of stuff. So, but I understand that there's this great opportunity now to set yourself up for post footy. I mean, you definitely went through it yourself. Got admiration for yourself as well. So, I get real joy and real energy of seeing these guys go about it, and understand that there's an ability to do it, and they sort of pave the way. And again, not sure what it looks like, but looking forward to actually getting into a great environment, meeting some really good people, and getting after it.
It's exciting, mate. I'm very excited for you. And yeah, I think I've said it a lot today, but I really admire what you are as a person, your values, and everything you've taught me. Like through that time, I remember you said that, the leveling up thing with Matty DeBoer, and I definitely got that from him. But I think just nearly that culture of a lot of guys that were there, like yourself and others, that just made me go, fuck, I need to do something with my life. Like, these people have got goals, and I don't want to harp on this too much with like heaps of quotes and stuff, but we do say it a lot. Like, you are who you surround yourself with, and I think that's a beautiful part in a footy club, is you can surround yourself with good blokes, but just maybe not at that time when they want to do something for their outside life yet, or they're not in that mode to grow yet, because we've probably both been in that system. But even in life, in people's friendship groups are in now, I always say, like, fuck, you are literally who you surround yourself with. If you're hanging around with drop kicks, like, you're probably going to be a drop kick.
Yeah, and you could like, I think naturally, like I definitely did early days, you put a cap on yourself as well. Like, and I used to, it wasn't like, I used to like have negative self-talk as a joke. Like, I used to joke about it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm shit at footy, and like I should be like, yeah, but I actually suck, so I can't do that, like. And I used to share a locker next to Steel Sidebottom, and he used to tell me all the time, like, you got to stop saying that shit, like. And I was like, oh, it's only a joke,
Yeah.
And then once I've met a few people, the great Gary Gorrow.
Yeah.
Spent a bit of time with him.
Who is a meditation coach.
Yeah, mindfulness coach. Meditation, does a bit of bits and pieces, but he talks about just like, like, there's this positive self-talk, and if you can manifest it to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And so that was something that really changed when I got to the Giants.
Yeah.
In terms of like, and that's helped me, tenfold. But again, meeting people along the way, like, this is great opportunity at football clubs there's a lot of people that will if you put out the olive branch, they'll help out.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nick Crocker on. I haven't met Nick yet, but I've had bits to do with him over Zoom and through Athletic Ventures. And what a weapon! Like, what a great human. Justin Lippman's another one that and Matt introduced me to. Like, just these guys are like super impressive guys. And in my head, it's like it's so far from, like anything, the realm of possibility for me early days. But now the more I get to know them, and the more, like, Nick talks about himself, like Nick talks himself down. Well, they all do, but
yeah. These
guys are so impressive to me. But he probably looks at me and go, like, I was you 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, there's just got to put the work in.
Well, don't you know, like, that thing as well is, like, if you don't see or hang around or meet people that have done things, you can't see it. So, like, you don't know what's possible till you see someone else do it.
Yeah.
Or you do it yourself. You're like, fuck, I didn't realise I could literally do that. Like, and for me, like, if I can go out of footy and have a job, like, you can fucking do anything. You know what I mean? It's really interesting. But
and it's not. I mean, it's not. People think it's so far out of their realm.
No,
and it's not. And you just got to put you also. It's not going to happen. Like a lot of guys get stuck in these footy clubs or in the footy environment, and it's like it'll just happen. But you got to go and put the work in. You got to go and you got to reach out. Read this. Put the time and effort in, and good things happen to good people. Like, it's, and I mean, it's not going to be perfect. Like, it's but that's my mentality. I just feel like in the end it'll work out if you put the work in. Like,
mate, incredible. You nailed that. Thank you so much for your time.
I just rambled on for it.
No, I love it. That's welcome to the podcasting game.
Yeah.
I've just been, like, noticing lately, I've been seeing all these trends on TikTok, which you don't watch, and it's like life as a podcaster, and they just talk absolute shit and keep coming up with quotes. I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly me. Like, I'm going to stop doing that. But then I'm like, well, that's fucking what podcasting is. So I can't stop. You enjoy it? Is that your first one?
First one, yeah. Long time listener.
Yeah, good.
But first podcast. I love it, man. I love what you're doing. It's great. Appreciate you giving me the time to tell a bit of my story. But
mate, honestly, there was probably another hour in there, so I think we'll have to catch back up and get another one.
Yeah, we'll maybe the microphones. We'll go and get a beer and just talk absolute dribble.
Done. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, bro.